Hey. I'll just wait a few more seconds for people to join, and then we'll start. If anyone has any questions they want to drop into the agenda, please do so. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and start. So welcome everyone. This is the May edition of the Delivery Group AMA. So the purpose of this is for you all to ask us any questions you may have about deploying to GitLab.com or releasing packages to our self-managed users. And we're happy to talk through things we're working on or maybe planning on working on, or also just day to day. I know we've got major milestone coming up, and we've been making changes to the patch release process, discussing maintenance policy, as well as our other projects. So would anyone like to kick us off and verbalize a question?
Sure, I'll ask about the backport releases, and that's most sort of top of mind right now. I'm curious about the sort of the experience that delivery has had with the backport changes. Has it been beneficial? Has it been, kind of a pain? Has there been a lot of confusion around it too?
Great question. Thanks for asking, Stan. So this has been interesting. I'll tell you a little bit about the story of the project and where we're at now, because I think that's also relevant to sort of lots of ongoing conversations. And then if Maya wants to jump in, share some of the stuff about the internal pilot, I'll let her. Otherwise, I'll also talk about that a little bit. But the maintenance policy discussion opened up, it was quite a while ago now. It's maybe like a year or a year and a half ago. And we recognized that we were getting sort of increasing numbers of backport requests to get bug fixes into some of the older versions, particularly the versions that we perhaps are still putting out security fixes for without the bug fixes. So delivery was allocated some additional headcount in order to automate and sort of support the workload that came with that. And we started doing the work to automate and improve the patch release process to support things. So unfortunately, something's changed. The headcount didn't land for us, and we managed to make some great process changes, which is what we're now seeing with the patch release process changes. This is really exciting for us because what we've done is taken away the sort of check where delivery people or release managers have to actually merge in bug fixes and just handed that back to developers. So it's sort of our first step towards self-serve deployments and releases tasks. So that's super exciting for us. Where we are right now is we are going ahead with adopting that as the official patch release process, but under the existing maintenance policy extension. So we're not currently planning to extend the maintenance policy because of the additional workload that may bring, which we can't currently support. So for right now, we will continue to be supporting bug fixes into the current version only, but using this new patch release process. And then we'll review that as we go along. More interesting, though, is the stuff that Myra is doing with the pilot, with the internal pilot. Myra, do you want to talk a little bit, and maybe actually I'll dig out some links whilst you talk and tell us a bit about how the rollout actually went?
Yeah, for sure. So it started on 15.10, in which we were piloting this new process for patch releases. So before that, we used the label of peak into the version, and then that label allows us to include those merge requests into the patch release. With the new process, we allow maintainers to merge into the stable branches, and then release managers at some point review what is the pressure for that version, and then prepare a patch release. So we basically delegate a bit of the responsibility to developers, so they can choose what when I mean they, I mean developers and product managers and the stage teams, so they can choose what is going to be included in a package, and then the responsibility of creating the patch release is off for release managers. This has reduced a fairly amount of time for release managers to build patch releases. So for example, in 15.10, I think we did 5 or 6, which is way more than the usual 2 that we used to do with the old process. So that is better. And we are on our way to implement this new process as the new patch release process. And there is an epic for that I plan to link. And I also can link the results of the internal patch release or the internal pilot.
Awesome. Thanks very much. Does that answer your question, Stan?
Yep. Just in general, is this been a positive thing that you've been experiencing?
Yeah, I think so. I think that what we're seeing is that fixes going into a patch releases much smoother. We've kind of separated out the responsibilities in a nicer way so that release managers can just focus on tagging and publishing. We let the stage groups decide, the fixes and how those go in. So I think that's working really well for us. So yeah, overall, it's been really positive. And from the links that Myra's dropped in as well, I think so far, I think there's a few neutral people, but hopefully that's a good neutral, that generally it seems to have worked out for people as well. But we're still seeking feedback. So if people disagree with that, please let us know.
Yeah, I think overall the experience for developers has also been positive because we are asking for them to create a merge request against a stable branch, and creating merge request for GitLab developers, it is basically, an everyday task. So we ran a survey a couple of weeks ago, and the sentiment across that survey was that this experience was a positive one for developers. So yeah, that was also a good data point.
Yeah, and when you're opening those merge requests, right, there's pipelines that run against those stable branches now for 15.10, which means you can really shorten the cycle time of, has my fix worked? Do I think it's going to be reliable for this build? Yes, I can do all of that self-serve without having to get, release managers and software engineers and tests to run those pipelines, on my behalf. So it should enable like much quicker kind of feedback loops on the patch kind of side that engineers are putting in and when creating those merge requests. But if it doesn't, let us know.
One group who I would mention who are not on this call, so we should just represent them, is Quality. Quality are the people who so far have lost out a little bit by our change here. We're using an interim process for the testing. And at the moment, that does add some workload for Quality. So we have a plan for that. We do need to rectify that to get that so it's always automated testing, so we don't have to keep pinging sets to do additional tests for us. Cool. Any final questions on patch releases or backports or the maintenance policy before we move on? No, great. Greg, do you want to verbalize?
Sure. Yeah, so I'm wondering if there is a way to even roughly determine how many feature flags were added but never enabled anywhere, be it GitLab.com or self-managed. For context, the application security team is discussing basically bounty awards for vulnerabilities detected where enabling a default disabled feature flag is required to exploit anything. And it came up that it may be the case we have feature flags developed but never actually enabled. And so trying to get an idea of, like how often that occurs and what percent of feature flags might never get enabled.
You want to verbalize that?
Yeah, so I mean, there's two sources of information, right? So feature flags are defined in a YAML in the GitLab like config development feature flags or something like that. So we know the list of all the feature flags that are available. Now we have to get the feature flags that are actually enabled in production, and that can be done either through, I think, the chat ops, or I think there's an API as well that I was about to link. And then I think we just compare those lists. We should be able to figure out which ones are not enabled.
This doesn't answer the question of knowing if something was never enabled at all in the history of that. Maybe, but I'm not sure. Because if I remember, those the state of feature flag is stored in the database. So if we actually want to know if something never, I mean, you can delete a feature flag, but we often either we enable or disable. It's really uncommon for us to delete until we actually remove the feature flag definition itself. So maybe from an AppSec perspective, is more interesting to see what's in the database. So because if something is in the file, so we have the file in the YAML file and it has no entry in the database, it means that no one ever either enabled or disabled it.
Is that true? I think when you remove a feature flag, it actually gets cleared from the database.
So if you flip the value, it should set it to false. But I'm not sure about this. I do remember there was the option to disable it and to remove it. So, I mean, it's been a long time, so it maybe isn't no longer this.
Yeah, we have an issue tracker that tracks all the feature flag changes. So if you really want to go through the history of all the, if it was flipped on, then you could go parse that. But I think it's more interesting to know which ones are not even turned on right now, right? Like that's the first step you probably want to know.
Yeah, I did look at the YAML, and I did find a docs page, and it looks like right now, based on what's in the YAML, 75% are disabled. So really trying to gauge, like, essentially it might not be a good idea to pay top dollar for bounties if it requires somebody enables a feature flag and there's any chance that that feature flag will never get enabled.
Right. I think you're referring to like the Debian package management, for example, like that's been disabled, but security bounty hunters are having a field day with that because it's not quite secure yet.
Yeah, exactly. And so right now there's basically a debate about should the bounty, we found a bug in the Debian package registry was detected. We're basing the bounty award on CVSS score, and it's basically a $20,000 difference in bounty award based on that's the debate right now.
Yeah, I wonder if we should gauge it against whether we consider the feature just alpha, right? If it's alpha, maybe it shouldn't be in that. And if behind a feature flag, that's just a secondary thing. But if we consider it beta and the feature flag can be turned on by customers and so forth, that's a different story, I think.
Does that give you everything you're looking for right now, Greg?
Yeah, I think I have enough for next steps. Thank you.
Awesome. Prabha, have I pronounced your name correctly?
Yeah.
Awesome. Welcome. Do you want to verbalize?
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, sure. Actually, I was trying to understand what happens after we kickstart the deployment, like where it's getting deployed and how do we scale, like in DevOps side, because I was actually working on a feature and trying to see the logs where we are also getting the pod information. So I kind of like landed in this doc where we captured how we migrated from VM to GKE, so where pods are getting involved. So my question is, I'm not sure really whether it applies to this call or the delivery team, but I'm just like asking here to see. I'm sure that you guys can point me in a right direction where I can understand this better. Yeah, so that's the question basically.
Oh, thanks for asking. Very relevant to
Yep.
what we do. Does anyone want to have a stab at giving an overview or finding some resources that give some context for this?
Yeah, thanks.
I was looking for the resources first, so let me paste it, and I hope it's the right one. If not, someone tell me as I
Just an
start
issue.
talking.
If it's a random issue, please feel free to pick it
Might
up.
be
No.
an interesting opportunity for me to just ask a question and do some validation. So I think one of the things we might be missing is a walkthrough of what happens to my change once it's merged to master. Would something like that as a handbook page or a doc be useful from your point of view to understand what happens to a change once it's merged to master, in a bit of a step-by-step simplified workflow kind of walkthrough or explainer?
Yeah, I think in that context, the link which Alessio just posted, I think that do have the steps involved in the general delivery. So I kind of have an image on what happens for my changes once I merge once I merge it to master branch. But what I'm wondering here is how let's say like for any at an GitLab.com level scale, so we are like getting 1 million or plus loggings, but I just wanted to understand where it's coming from which machine maybe, or yeah, I can understand that the question is not properly formed because I don't have the question not properly formed in my head as well, but I just like wanting to see how we handle the scaling as well, like what happens if there are, or how do we scale our GitLab.com, for example, like is it just handled by GK itself, or do we have any configuration on that, or if there is any resource which describes how we handle our actual machine where our GitLab.com is hosted or being deployed, something like that.
Okay, I think that I can take this more or less, if only Skarbek was around. So yeah, so for the stateless services, we completed the Kubernetes migration. I don't know the status of what was described in the first link that you found. So ideally, in general, the idea is this: we have several clusters. So when we deploy, first of all, we have 2 stages. So for each environment, we have a canary stage and the main stage. So let's talk about the main stage, which probably is the thing that you care the most about this. So with the main stage is based on several clusters, zonal and multi-regional, multi-zonal, I don't remember. And so basically, we deploy the Helm charts on clusters by cluster. Okay. So for scaling in each cluster, we are using HPA. So if you want to dig more into how this thing is configured, I think you will be able to find it in the Kate's workload repo. Not sure. I think it's the right one. So anyway, the configuration is in the repo itself. So just maybe ask in what's the name of the channel? Infra Lounge, if it wasn't renamed recently. Yeah, Infrastructure Lounge. Yeah. And so maybe someone that actually worked on that piece of information can point you where the configuration is, and then you can read it and ask other questions. And
yeah, that totally makes sense. Thanks for the details.
You're welcome.
It might be helpful to look at the link I shared there. There's a production architecture. It may be good just to look at that and gives you a high level picture, but the main thing to notice is that most of it's in GKE, with the exception of, I think, the Gitly nodes. They're running on actual VMs.
Awesome. Thanks for asking that and for the answers. And yeah, as Alessio mentioned, like we have the Infrastructure Lounge is a sort of infrastructure department-wide channel. So if you have specifics or you get stuck on specifics, that's a great place to drop in and ask more. Lots of people will be around to help. Awesome. I wanted to ask a little bit about metrics. So I know our delivery system team have been doing amazing work on expanding out delivery metrics, adding loads of dashboards. Would someone mind just giving us a bit of an overview and sharing the most exciting links so we can all enjoy that?
Sure. I'm gonna take this one. I don't know if everybody has access here to our dashboards, but in general, I will post the links here. So we actually started to work on this already in the Q4, where we started to build the capabilities to collect metrics from our pipelines and traces in particular, right? Because in particular, we were using the use case of deployment SLO in some parts where we had this number or MTTP that we didn't know where we were spending all of our time. And we evolved in that direction during Q1. And during Q1, we started to look at exactly how we can drill down to the deployment SLO and how we can just get more information on where we spend time. In all in our pipelines, how much time we take for various jobs, various stages, but not only that, but also understanding which are the major inefficiencies that we have in our deployment pipeline. So we started to collect metrics around how many times we are trying jobs and to which project these jobs are belonging to, and these also making understand how much time we are adding on top of our MTTP because we have these failures. So maybe there is a job that is failing 3-4 times in a row and then we retry and then pass, and maybe it's just some flakiness. But this adds on top of our MTTP, that is the delivery lead metric, minutes and hours at the end of our week, day, or in which pipeline we are running. So we started to identify all these, so identify these kind of bottlenecks, and this is going to be probably the first step ahead, where we can start to, we know exactly where to look, we know exactly which are the main drivers component that are make us spend time in the wrong places. And in addition to that, we started to understand exactly if we start to see some trends. Okay, we have sometime a particular job or particular project that start to take more and more time. At this point, we can start to address this part and say, okay, maybe we have something to look at. Maybe our MTTP is actually increasing because of this factor here and so on. And on top of that, we are able to drill down the various components of the deployment SLO, right? How much time we are spending on QA, how much time we're spending on deploying Italy, Prefect, or deploying our main stage and so on. So we can exactly measure these kind of things. So we start to take action or what in the problems that we faced, but also to understand which are the parts that we have more chance to improve that are going to give us the bigger benefits. Now I'm going to look here. I'm going to link a dashboard, but I'm not sure if everyone has access to it. We're also planning to have a demo on this part soon, as soon as we have some documentation in place, and we were also able to link together various dashboards, because we're trying to build this in a way that we can drill down from a single pipelines to the single failures that we have, and from that look at the various stages and projects and jobs. So to be able for the release managers, but not only for release managers, to understand how each pipeline went and which are the problems that we face on those.
And I suppose related to that, we also have been doing some work to track release manager workload, which is a sort of set of metrics we haven't previously had. And that sits alongside existing metrics that we have, which is MTTP and deployment blockers, which we've been tracking for some time. So what we're planning to do is pull together all of this data and turn it into some sort of easily digestible monthly overview of sort of the state of deployments and releases with all the relevant pieces. And then hopefully that makes it a lot more accessible as well. Awesome. Great work, system. Super to see this stuff. Excited to start using it. So we are pretty much at time. Does anyone have anything else they would like to ask today?
Well, thanks for all your work, especially with all the backports. Really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Dan. Thanks everyone for joining us. Great to have you all here. Thanks for everyone for asking questions. Really appreciate you coming and taking an interest in things and pushing us to keep improving. And yeah, enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. Take care. Bye.